Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, March 14th, 2018 to order. Can we have a roll call, please, Mr. Alexandrovich?
Yes. Mrs. Witkowski.
Here.
Mr. Gamble.
Here.
Mr. Nielsen.
Here.
Mrs. Evans.
Here.
Mr. Lewis.
Here.
I am here and Mrs. Larson is excused.
Thank you. The meeting has been properly posted. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3 on the agenda is community comment. If anyone would like to make community comment, please come to the table and give us your name and address and speak into the microphone, please. Is there any community comment?
Is this on?
Yes.
Okay. Orville Seamer, 3020 West Acre Avenue, Franklin. I am here for a number of reasons, mainly to address the issue of school security. About a month, well, it's about 3 weeks ago, I made an open records request for all the fire drills, active shooter drills, whatever the case may be, in the Franklin School District. And as many of you know, the Attorney General says 10 to 14 days is a reasonable period of time to produce records on simple open records requests. That was a pretty simple open records request. I finally got the records today, 3.5 weeks later, okay? My understanding is that at least one school, they had a fire drill, active shooter, some type of drill after I made the request, which makes me wonder if the drill would have not been scheduled if I wouldn't have made the request. I don't know that for sure, but it looks a little suspicious. A couple years ago, I made requests for policies and procedures to both Franklin and Oak Creek. Oak Creek has got a very detailed plan should there be some kind of emergency, fire, active shooter, whatever the case may be. Hopefully it's not an active shooter. It's about 30 pages long. Maybe Franklin's updated here since then, but it was only 5 pages. Very general, and I get the impression that Franklin has not. Maybe now. I had a brief conversation with the superintendent before the meeting started. Maybe they're taking it seriously now, but if you're taking it seriously now, why did it take this long? That's the question I got. I also have a letter from a parent of the Franklin parent, and I'm sure some of you have been copying on it. I don't have it with me. Sorry, my printer stopped. But then former superintendent Steve Patz, this parent questioned the school security, and Mr. Patz said, no, we're satisfied with what we have. Now, that was about a year ago. So clearly at that point, you weren't taking it seriously. I didn't come here with just complaints. I've got a couple suggestions, at least a couple. When I was in grade school, which is a few years ago, we had, instead of having these aluminum doors like you have in the doors out here, that with the large pane of glass in them, we had a steel door with a very narrow pane of glass about this tall, with the wire embedded in the glass. So if somebody would break out the glass, shoot out the glass, or any way try to break out the glass to get entrance into the school, it would still be very difficult because you had the wire in there. You couldn't just reach in and open the door. So I would suggest you look at retrofitting all the doors in the school district to make that more difficult for somebody to get in. The second thing I'd make a suggestion on is that you retrofit all the doors so that if somebody opens a door that's not authorized, that alarm goes off. If you go to the Milwaukee County Courthouse, there are 3 entrances to get into the courthouse. You have to go through a metal detector. There are other doors that are locked that have an alarm on them, so that if somebody opens it from the inside, the alarm goes off and the deputies will show up very quickly. So I would suggest to look at that, because in schools right now, you all know there's numerous doors, and if somebody's standing outside and a young kid is walking by and they're pounding on the door, the kid's gonna let him in. What if that's somebody with a gun? We got to put a stop to that. And the last thing I would offer is, I don't know if you after-school activities. Somehow you have to make these schools secure during after-school activities. A couple years ago, I took some evening courses at Franklin High School through Parks and Rec. And at one point, our classroom was locked, and I just wandered the entire school. It was 7 o'clock, 7:30 at night. I wandered around the entire school looking for the janitor with the key. If I was an evil person, I don't believe I am, some people may disagree with that, but if I was an evil person, I could walk into the school, place a weapon, hide it somewhere, and the next day go through the metal detectors and dig up my weapon, and who's going to stop me at that point? So it's time to take this stuff seriously. It is time. It's been 20 years since Columbine. Why it's taking us so long already, I have no idea. You know, Mr. Andrew Pollock, the father of one of the victims in Florida, if you saw him on TV, I'm sure everybody saw him, seemed like a nice enough guy. He said, we solved this one time. It happened, 9/11 happened one time, we solved it. Every courthouse, or virtually every courthouse in this country, you have to go through a metal detector to get into that courthouse. Schools, why we waited this long is beyond me. So that's all I have.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Is there any other community comment tonight?
Hi, my name is Paula Weckman. I'm at 7140 West Woodbury Drive in Franklin. And I have two kids, one in third grade at Ben Franklin and one at the middle school. I'm here tonight to express concern regarding the number of students there are currently in the third grade at Ben Franklin. And I would ask that in your preliminary discussions regarding the budget for next year, that you consider part of the policy of 4240 that states there's a decision-making process related to individual needs in the classroom. This group, any class can argue that there's unique individuals in every classroom. This one seems to be overloaded with extreme needs, both emotionally and psychologically and educationally. So saying that, in your preliminary discussions regarding the budget, to perhaps consider another full-time teacher for the fourth grade at Ben Franklin. I think by doing that, that would not only alleviate the number of students that are in there, obviously it would reduce class size, but also separate the needs to be able to focus on them more intensely and get them up to the standards that Franklin is known for. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other comment?
Good evening.
Hi.
My name is Sammy Rango. I am the executive director and co-founder of an organization called Life After Hate. We're the only nonprofit in the United States committed, I should have given you my address.
Oh,
I'm
yes,
sorry.
thank you.
2031 Slauson Avenue, Racine, Wisconsin. We're the only nonprofit in the United States committed to combating far-right violent extremism, and the only group that effectively helps change the minds and hearts of individuals who once practiced racism, hatred, and intolerance. Thank you all for allowing me to speak tonight. Our group is about compassion, understanding, and healing. And while I am here on behalf of Life After Hate, I'm also here as a longtime resident of Racine, with children currently in Racine Unified School District, both in elementary and at the high school level. The recent incidents at Franklin High School hit close to home. I want to be clear that I'm not here to assign or place blame on this board or towards the high school. I'm only here to offer my support, expertise, and resources. Since 2011, my colleagues and I have been touring internationally, speaking and training at summits held by law enforcement, researchers, educators, and social service providers. We talk about issues concerning the root causes of racism, and more importantly, how to deal with these issues as an institution or as a community member. My local work here is also well known with schools, detention centers, reentry, youth outreach, crisis interventions, violence, exploitation, alcohol and drug issues, families, youth, and individuals. We have recently returned from Loudoun, Virginia, which is why I couldn't be here last week as we were over there. This is a community that has made national news since it's been flared with KKK propaganda several times since October of last year. We were sought out and invited to speak to the Attorney General from the state of Virginia, congresswomen of the district, and about 20 congregations, as well as the local NAACP, the chair of the county board of supervisors, mayors from surrounding cities, the sheriff, FBI, and students from local high schools in that county. About 500 community members attended as well. Our message was highlighted as being much needed and well received, and will lead to the implementation of joint strategies and messaging dealing with the issues visiting that community. Earlier this year, Franklin High School sent a note to parents that included the line, "As a school community, we have the responsibility to treat one another with kindness, respect, empathy, and compassion." Those words truly resonated with me, and I would be honored to partner with and speak to the student body, faculty, and administration of Franklin High School, the district, and its community. Please accept this as an open invitation. We're only as strong as the communities that support us. We stand with this community, and we want to see it come together. Thank you.
Thank
If
you.
it's okay, I'll
Thank
leave
you.
my statements on the side with some business cards for anyone who'd like to reach out. Appreciate that.
Would anyone else like to speak tonight? Anyone else? Thank you for your comments. Now we'll move on to item 4, approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Witkowski, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gamble, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4 is school board announcements. Do we have any announcements tonight?
Well, I did attend the coherence planning meeting, which was the first meeting. Tomorrow's the breakfast at the high school, and did catch the gallery night at the high school, which everybody else was there also. The artwork was fabulous, and I did attend a Educational Foundation committee meeting last night, and they are looking to give away some money, so if you have ideas, let them know. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other announcements? All right. School board calendar, item 6. We have a regular board meeting Wednesday, March 28th, here at the ECC at 6 o'clock p.m., and a regular board meeting Wednesday, April 11th, here at the ECC at 6 o'clock p.m. Item 7, reports and presentations. 7A, the Human Resources Report, Health Insurance and Employee Wellness Update, Mrs. Valley Ellhausen.
Okay. Good evening.
Hi.
All right, so I think just for the layout here, I'll go through the slides and then take questions. That way you'll have the whole picture and be happy to field some questions following, if that's fair. Okay. So I'm going to first start talking through wellness and build the framework around the importance of wellness. In terms of the elements of success within a wellness program, really starts with the engagement, motivation, support, and strategy. And when we think about engagement, we want employees involved, we want leadership involved, in terms of that being a two-way street. Motivation, no two individuals are necessarily the same, and so we have to think about that as we look at wellness in our system. Support is critically important, whether that's leadership to the employee, employees to employees, our vendor support in these types of programs, and then strategy. This is pretty complex when you think about wellness, and so there isn't a one solution to the approach, and you have to think about that when you're working it through. We know that employees must be involved. They have to have a voice in this program in order to get those 4 elements up above there to kind of take hold and root into the culture, which is the last bullet I'll point out. Constant evolution. So you've got to have short and long-term focus, because as you're moving and you're beginning this journey, you have to keep your eye on both what is successful short term, but then what is the longer term focus. And we use goals and metrics to establish that objective why, so that it doesn't appear subjective to an employee as to why this type of culture around wellness is critically important for everyone, not just the employer, but them as well in the journey. The challenge really does lie in the execution of a good wellness strategy, because ultimately what you're striving for here is behavior modification. We know that through behavior modification, individuals take lifestyle changes, and those lifestyle changes then result and create ROIs in other parts of their individual personal lives, but also from the employer side for us in many of the programs that we offer. So we often think about it from just the standpoint of the health insurance, but it's much broader than that when we think about good wellness. And so you have to think of ways to reinforce that through different programs and multiple programs. There has to be a lot of different touch points in the framework. And then lastly, you have to build some really strong relationships so that, again, that engagement is deep as it should be in order to be successful. And ultimately, what you're striving for is that it permeates the culture, that in your organization and here in Franklin, that we have a culture around wellness. So that's the really the long-term objective that takes time. This isn't something that is necessarily done overnight. What we did this past year is we formed a wellness team, and it's an 18-member team. It's comprised of employees across different work groups in the organization, insured and not insured through Franklin, because wellness is about all of us, not just one segment of our population. So we have 18 members that meet on that team and have committed to the journey. It's not a committee that just will meet this year. It's an ongoing committee. And we've established our vision, and we've established our mission, and I'll give you just a second to read it. I'm not going to read it to you, but it's there. Oh. Yeah. Sorry, guys, I'll get that little annoying guy to stop there. Or not. Sorry. Technology, it never leaves you alone. All right, so there's where the committee has spent some time developing this work so that we can be committed to our vision and our mission as we do our work. And I'm going to come back to the committee at the end or the close of the presentation. Now, Go365 is a tool. It's a tool that we use, and this is important because this is also part of a health insurance update, and I am sure you remember that last spring when we committed to Humana as our partner for health insurance, we also committed to a tool that they utilize for wellness, which is Go365. And we set up some conditions or expectations around that for our employees. And so this tool is only available to our insured staff and their dependents in terms of utilization through Humana. It is a program. It's a comprehensive suite of tools and resources. It has flexibility because you can do it all individually. You can have collective challenges through this platform. You can join challenges where you don't even know the folks necessarily. They may be across different states or regions or areas, and so it has great flexibility in it. It is intended to be very personal. So what I might have as my goals or my deployment of what I'm working on through Go365 may not be the same as Mr. Milzer here, and so there's elements of personalization to it. And then it really does track. It has this accumulator, and it's rewarding me or positively reinforcing through points that accrue in their system. We, Franklin, incentivize participation in Go365 through benefit design. Also, engagement in Go365 impacts our overall plan renewal. So I'll try to make sure that's clear as I close and again, certainly take questions. The incentive design on an individual basis, so on an employee basis, is really within Go365. There, those points that I just referenced that I'm tracking as I engage in activities around being well equate to status levels. And those status levels then drive the premium contribution that an employee pays the next year. So if an employee hits gold or platinum status, 12% is what they will pay of the premium starting July 1 of 2018 for achieving that status level. Silver is 13%, and then blue or bronze is 15%. So that's the incentive design for an employee. Here is where we are. So I'm going to point you to the bluer part of the chart because we have achieved 69% of our employees in that silver, gold, or platinum status. And we have 32% of our employees in that platinum status, that highest level of achievement in the program. And then you see gold at the 21% and silver at 16%. So this is where we sit as of 3/12. Now, the reason that that is important is that employees were informed that they had through February 28th to achieve their status level. However, all points aren't yet accrued into the system because if an individual had a physical exam, for example, at the end of February, those points may not yet be in their account. It takes about 30 days for rollout. So we'll probably see this shift a little, but I wouldn't say it's going to shift a lot if I had to project at this point in time. So 69% of the employees are in that incentivized level.
Sorry to interrupt, I know you wanted
Yep.
questions at the end, but what overall percentage of our staff population is insured through our plan? And do you have that number?
Well, we have 332
Okay.
plans,
Out of
employees
500,
insured.
over
About,
500,
yeah.
okay.
It depends how you count coaches and all that,
Okay.
Jeff, so I don't want to misquote or misspeak there as a percentage. Some of the tools and the resources we use to help employees to begin that journey, the biggest one was the biometric screening. So that screening where the 4 key elements are measured of an individual's health, cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar, and then BMI. 75% participation in the biometric screening. So that's really good in the first year of the program to see that participation level. Many employees utilized the individual coaching that then came as a result of those biometrics being loaded into their Go365 accounts. We had many employer challenges, and they did some of those challenges on their own. So again, go back to that first slide, and it isn't a one-size-fits-all, and so you've got to have some individual and some employer engagement in this. We had physical challenges, diet challenges, stress management challenges. We had some challenges that were site-based. We had some challenges that were just within certain employee groups that they created, and then individuals, of course, had their own challenges that they participated in through the program that was available to them. Our outcome is good for us for next school year, or next fiscal year. Our engagement, our renewal, with our engagement, our renewal for health and dental is flat. There is no increase. So if you go back to kind of that conversation in April, you know, we knew that if we had 10% engagement in Go 365, that we'd see 5% increase on our renewal. And we knew that the max was going to be 13%, that 13% under the contract would have been the max that we could have seen in an increase, but that this engagement in Go 365 was also a contributor to bringing that premium renewal or that plan renewal increase down. So 10% was kind of this minimum bar that would only give us 5%. 40% was kind of the benchmark we set, and then 60% was the stretch goal. That was really the high end of what the markers were set at, and again, we have 69%, so we exceeded all three of those goals that were established back in that April-May timeframe. And so this isn't, again, I'm kind of just going to bring it back full circle. We're not done. We probably, with wellness, you're never really done. So our committee is focused in on setting goals and strategies. Based upon employee interest, we had an interest survey that we took of our employees. We had a very high percentage response rate. 70% of our employees indicated they want to participate in wellness activities, and 91% of them already have a personal health goal. So we're using that data in the committee to help design the strategies that we'll deploy moving forward in certain areas. We're also focusing in on the results from the biometrics. So although the biometrics, although we talk about the fact that the Wellness Committee is really focused in on wellness of all employees, every employee can participate in the wellness activities, the insured employees get this kind of positive byproduct in that it helps build their Go 365 points, but it's important that we include all employees in it. But in terms of having some metrics, because we have such a high participation rate in our biometrics, we're using those biometrics to kind of measure goal attainment. Are we moving those markers? Are we moving the at-risk category in blood pressure, for example, down and more into the normal range? So it's one of the key measures we're using as an attainment piece. And we're going to continue the on-site biometrics because I think that that was instrumental in the participation rates that we saw, so we are going to continue that on site here in August. The committee really keeps Go 365, again, as I stated, as a resource for those employees that are insured, that are participating, to help them along that journey so that they also can use more tools in there that they have access to, and in turn see their premium contributions reduced. And we will always be evolving, keep a long-term focus. If you go back to that mission and that vision there, it's pretty broad brush and it's pretty long-term focus. So this is where we're at as of right now. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
So what's the range of activities that get you points? I'm imagining that do the biometric, you're, what, 2/3 there, and then, that's not easy.
Yep, the biometric is the biggest one, and the biometric participation in the biometric has points, and then your outcomes in those 4 areas also earn your points. But you get points for fitness and physical activity. You get points for having dental cleanings and doing your preventative types of exams. You get points for certain certifications or trainings. You get points for their education. That coaching, if you will engage in that coaching component and you go through the coaching cycles, you'll get points there. So there's not a one size. Your points may be very different than my points.
It's a big menu. Big menu.
Big menu, yes.
And does the menu events, what percent are on site? What percent are, off site? You doing your own thing, going to your own gym, doing whatever class you want?
Yeah, I don't know that we have that data.
I'm just-
The Wellness Committee this year ran 6 events that were on site, that were employer sponsored. Now, as we continue to evolve, there'll be far more with the committee setting those goals and strategies.
And when did they occur?
The Wellness Committee had challenges in October.
I mean, during the day, I don't care time of the year, but.
Oh, it depends, because for some it was stress management, and for some it was walking groups, like during lunch or before. There were scheduled walks. We had a walk before the PD day, so it just depends.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you.
Have the issues with Humana that started at the beginning regarding communication, I recall hearing employees had trouble communicating with Humana, and there were issues like that. Have they been resolved?
A good number of them. There are always disruptions that occur with any carrier change that are somewhat unanticipated, because you don't know them until they've hit you, and then there's a reaction to them. But as we have found themed ones that not just one employee have, but more employees have, so there's more of a trend around them, we have proactively addressed them with Humana and asked for corrective measures go forward. But some of them are cyclical. They may have only happened at a particular point in time, like when a switch happened on January 1 of 2018. There was a lot of disruption, and we've rectified that, but it wouldn't necessarily occur again until January 1 of 19, if that makes sense.
So I did attend one of the meetings that staff was at when we first changed over, and after Dr. Miller came on, and you were pretty open with employees that they could contact you if there were problems. Are they comfortable
Oh, yes.
talking to you about
As I do
issues like
building
this?
hours,
Okay. Yeah.
that is probably the number one question or help or assistance I provide, is around either Go 365 or Humana.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, one other question. Will Horton be coming to talk to us at all, or is this the update we need then? The only update? Yeah.
This is the update. I think it's fantastic that you hit the high benchmark, surpassed it and have no increase. That is awesome.
Celebration.
That is
And it's a
awesome.
12-month.
So you have to sustain that now to get the zero next? What is the next? Or does it stay the same? How long is this contract?
Well, the 0% is our 2018, 2019 number. So we'll have that until then, and at this time next year, they'll be looking at it again to see.
But it was only a 2-year lock on that plan, right?
We really
On the
could.
program of the 0% increase was only offered for
For
the
one renewal,
18-19
I think.
year, correct?
The limit on what the increase would be is only for the first year, but the program to have a reduction through Go 365 continues into the future. And we could leave at any time, but after we've done all the work and we have a 0% increase, now isn't the time to leave, but it could be at the end
But
of
that's,
next
I
year
mean,
when we look
the
at where they're at.
69% involvement next year could result in a 15% increase if they viewed a high cost of claims over the 18-19 year, correct?
If we had a significantly higher claims, yeah, then the number that we're lowering from could be higher, yes.
How has our claim ratio been?
It's better than it was before, probably, at this time of year, probably by 20%. Yeah, so we're doing better than we've done in at least 3 years right now. So I'm hoping that we've done one of those and we're kind of flattening out now.
I think there's a greater health conscious kind of permeating the district a little bit. It's more on their minds, you think, or is it just?
I think so.
I think so. I mean, it's that delicate balance of making sure that they do not feel it's forced, that they own some of the ownership in it. And so with the Wellness Committee being representative of so many employees, and as they really take hold and set some work here over their next 12 months, I think we'll see it more, but it takes time. It really does take time.
If you can remind me, who is our broker?
Horton,
It was Horton?
yeah.
Okay.
And that pool changes too, right? I mean, older people leave, younger people are hired, so is that a factor?
Sure. Well, yes. Mhm.
They still have to get involved in the program. though.
Right, that's true. I know it's, I'm not gonna, but part of it
That was
is
good
your
to see.
Claims.
come from different groups.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Item 7B is the middle school program planning. Mrs. King.
Using up my cat.
Okay. Good evening, I think it's evening anyway. Thank you for having us. Oh, I hope we're going. Our goal this evening is to provide you an update with the work that we have been conducting at the middle school as we look towards the big, beautiful building that is being built behind me, probably right now, as there's people out there all the time, it seems. We've been doing a lot of work, as we know we have a lot of work ahead of us. Will be welcoming an additional and grade level when we move into the new building. We are looking at the 2019-2020 school year as what will that look like? How will we function as a 6th through 8th grade building, welcoming a lot more students and also a lot more staff. So we started with working through some values, looked at research, gathered feedback from staff in order to start to look at what will programming look like for a middle school student at the new Forest Park Middle School. And part of this included starting that conversation with our current 5-6 teachers. And we say 5-6 because right now we don't know what that means and who will be coming over to the middle school. So our goal is to be able to include as many staff members in this conversation as possible. So you'll hear throughout this that we've visited all of the elementary buildings. We've engaged in those conversations with those staff members as well. So to begin, back in November and December, we started to engage in some of our values work. And what's projected on the screen right now are some values that were put into place at Forest Park Middle School in the 2010-2011 school year. They're very wordy, they're long, but really they have a lot of great information within them. But we acknowledged with our staff that in 2010-2011, there were a lot of current Forest Park staff members who weren't in the building. Actually, we had about 25 new staff members since these values were created. And it was a great time to start to look at these again. So we picked through some of them and started with some key words that came out of them, which we'll get to in a minute. You guys are so kind. In doing so, we did a little searching as well around what do other people do? What does other people, other districts, other middle schools, who are they and what do they stand for? And we came across some nice graphics, which this school, you can see clearly who they are and what they stand for. This school, they decided to have not only key values, but also those value statements and what that means for them. And our staff really liked being able to see the different options out there and what other people do to start that thinking process. Because we didn't want to start from scratch. We didn't need to start from scratch. We had a lot of good values in place. So this is the slide that was supposed to come after the other one. You'll see the key words from our current values that were put in place in 2010-2011. So high expectations for all, educating the whole child, exploration, respect, sense of belonging, commitment to learning, relationships, learning for all, collaboration, innovation. Those were key words out of the value statements that were put in place in 2010-2011. So we wanted some place to start. And so we projected those, we talked through those with all of our staff members. And what we did then was we put those words up on the wall. And we had two different groups because we wanted to be cognizant of everybody's lives and offered two different time frames. So they were back-to-back dates, and we ran the exact same process with both groups of staff members that were there. And we gave everybody 3 green dots. And we put those words up on the wall and any additional words that they felt we were missing. So we listened, and what are we missing? What key values do we need to keep in mind as we start to move towards this new building? And they then put their 3 green dots onto the paper. And then we collected both, so you'll see green was on one day and lilac was on the other day. And those that are on the right-hand side are the words that the groups generated on their own. And so we looked at where were the majority of our dots and what does that mean? And is that reflective of who we are and what we want to be? Ultimately looking at how do we start to program for this new building? And these were the 3 that really came out: educating the whole child, exploration, and high expectations for all. And when we reflected on those 3, we really felt as a staff and as administrators that we could start to craft what we would want a school day to be for students at that new middle school. We could picture that. So what we started from there was we came up with those statements so we could further define what that meant for us. We acknowledged any school, any district might have those 3 same values, but it might reflect differently for them. It might reflect differently for who they are and what that means for a student. And when we've gone through this process, we have not acknowledged we want to learn from others, but we want to stay true to who we are in Franklin at the same time. So we started with some draft statements, and we brought these to the teachers. And we asked them to really take Post-its and throw them down all over these documents, pick them apart. What do we like? What do we not like? And that's what they did. And these are only a handful of the Post-its that they put all over them. And what does that mean? Are we hitting the right target? Does this really mean what we want it to mean? And we also took these same statements to the elementary buildings. And we asked the 5-6 teachers, does this reflect you? Does this reflect the 6th grade student? What are we missing? You are the experts on those 6th graders who will be coming to us. And ultimately, we landed on 3 values and 3 value statements: high expectations for all, educating the whole child, and exploration. And I'll let you read those. So we had these put in place in December, and we felt really good about them, that really is what we would want for our students, and acknowledging that middle school student and the time in their life and what we want for them, that we can't lose sight of our high academic expectations, but including behavioral and social emotional development within that, and exploration. As you know, we're building this new beautiful building with the facilities that we can have different exploratory offerings for all kids, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So we put together some work teams. We didn't want to do this on our own. We know that we want teacher voice and input in the process. So all 5th through 8th grade teachers were invited to join a work team. Any teacher who wanted to be on that work team was on a team. They were co-facilitated by a director or by Jake or myself, and we met with those co-facilitators. As we acknowledge, that can be a tricky line for them as well, to be able to truly co-facilitate and let those teachers be part of the process and be teacher leaders in our building. So we met 3 times in January and February as those smaller work teams. The teachers and administrators on the team were given some homework in between, and they were expected to come to the table having conducted their homework and reading the research, which was the first meeting. So we provided them, all work teams, with 4 different studies. 2 were from the Hanover Research Studies, if I'm saying that right, thank you, from 2016 and 2017, and they are meta-analyses or meta-syntheses, so they involve a lot of different studies. It was not focused on just one aspect of a certain narrow focus of research. And so we were able to bring those together and really look at what does the research tell us is best practice for a high-performing middle school. So the teams conducted the research, they engaged in the research, came together as a team, and debriefed on what are we seeing around what the research tells us about the allocation of instructional core minutes, the allocation of instructional elective minutes, and that balance for students as a whole child. So what does it tell us about schedules or relationships and where those fit within the school day for students? After that, we asked teams to engage in looking at schedules from surrounding districts. We looked at and we pulled the course guidebooks and the schedules of minutes, the daily bell schedules from area districts who tend to outperform us on our state report card. So we looked at what are people doing around us whose other demographics might look similar to us, and what can we learn from them. So we looked at those, and we had discussions around the same three key areas of what are they doing around the allocation of instructional core minutes, allocation of elective minutes, and then that whole child. What type of scheduling day do they have? How many adults do they interact with on a daily basis? Are they a house system? How many elective offerings do they have? The teams then came together a third time in order to come up with their recommendations as a team, again following those same three guiding questions around allocation of core minutes, allocation of elective minutes, and then that whole child approach of the middle school student. We came together on February 20th, where the 5 work teams shared out with one another their recommendations. If staff members were not able to make it to that meeting in order to see the recommendations that were shared by the work teams, we shared that out to all 5th through 8th grade teachers in order for everybody to have access to that information. Some key recommendations from the research and the work teams is what is projected at this point up on the screen. The first one was more direct instruction of literacy. The research stated that high-performing middle schools have somewhere between 75 to 120 minutes of literacy instruction in a day. And that's direct instruction in addition to any sort of embedded disciplinary literacy and other content areas. The research and the work team stated that math minutes should be at a minimum of 60 minutes per day. That science and STEM education is continuing to evolve, that we know that there are a lot of careers out there that haven't been invented yet that revolve around that science and STEM education. Focus on elective offerings. So we know that part of our belief is exploration within the middle school, and that came through the research and the work team recommendations as well, allowing students to be able to explore and interact with different types of courses. The house system was incredibly important to not only our work teams and our teachers, but it came through in the research that the house system within a middle school at 6th, 7th, and 8th is incredibly important for building relationships, limiting the number of adults students interact with in a day, and being able to get to know students at that personal level where these middle school students really just want people to understand them. Flexible scheduling. So that means within the research and the work teams, it came through that they want to be able to have blocks of time where you can flex what you might be doing that day, or where a student might have a need, or have larger chunks of time for a science lab or a different type of class project that might be happening, and not have to just change classrooms because the bell rang. This one I touched on a little bit within the house system, that limiting the transitions and number of adults in a student's day came through as a recommendation from the research and the work teams. Common planning time amongst our teachers is incredibly important, along with interdisciplinary work. So making those connections amongst our class subjects and not asking students to reset in between their classes. And we make a lot of connections as adults between science and math worlds and literacy and social studies, and when you ask to write an argument in one class period and how that transitions into the other class period, and making sure that those connections are there. And that common planning time is needed in order to have that common experience for students, that we expect that when they're at our middle school or anywhere in our district, that they have that opportunity for that high learning environment. RTI implications came through in the research and the work teams, where we know we need a time in order to intervene with students who may be struggling, but trying to find that time that's going to work for the individual, so they're not missing electives or missing core classes, and is difficult to try to find that sweet spot for the student who might really be musical. We don't want to have them miss their music class, but we still acknowledge we need to intervene academically as well. Relationships and advisory came through in the research and the work teams, that it needs to be purposeful, that middle school students, that middle school child building relationships at a very difficult time in their life is an important aspect. We gathered feedback from the staff after they saw all of the recommendations from the work team, and we gathered that feedback. From 5th through 8th grade, they were given the opportunity to provide that feedback. First and foremost, it came through that we really need to be mindful of the middle school student. When we make decisions, that they are at the heart of our decision-making process, and making sure that we look beyond just academic expectations, but social, emotional, and behavioral needs that our students may have. The house system, flexible schedules, common planning time continued to come through as a need, a desire. It is what we currently have. Our teachers have common planning time, and it is incredibly valuable. Interdisciplinary work. This came through loudly as well, that teachers want to be able to look at standards in a different way, where they're able to meet maybe multiple content areas within an interdisciplinary unit or an interdisciplinary manner. We currently have a class called Core Plus that is in addition to their students' core classes that is taught by core teachers. This is a time where students engage in extension opportunities or maybe intervention. It is a time that our staff feels that we could look at differently and utilizing in a more meaningful way. Advisory is important but needs definition. This came from our staff in the sense that we are acknowledging that advisory and talking about mentorships and relationships with students is incredibly important, but we don't want it to just be a waste of time. And within the research and different districts around us, a lot of schools have advisory, but it could be used for so many different things, and making sure that we have a common approach and common definition to what that advisory would mean and be for us would need to be thought out. Our staff felt that forced electives early on, meaning in 6th grade, maybe 7th grade, with gradually increasing choice in 7th and 8th grade. In order to have that forced exploratory, we currently have that in 7th grade, where all students engage in the wheel around family consumer science, tech ed, business, and art. And then in 8th grade, they have more choices. We would like to see that continue within 6th grade, where students have that forced electives in order to build that awareness and really understand and explore different areas before making those choices. Recommendations from the staff exit slips also said more literacy and more math, but continue to value science and social studies. So if you're like me, you read through all of them, and you're like, well, how do you do it all? Because that's a lot, and we only have a certain number of minutes in a school day with our kiddos. So our key considerations is we are keeping our students and values at the forefront. So through high expectations for all, we really want to create the conditions for interdisciplinary instruction and have common planning time. Educating the whole child, we want to maintain the house system and continue to focus on relationships with our students. And exploration, that forced exploration and then increasing choices as students move through our middle school, so they're really aware of their strengths and interests, or maybe areas that they want to improve as they go and sign up for courses at our high school. So what does it all mean? What are we looking at in the 2019-2020 school year? Relationships through the house system and interdisciplinary work. We will most likely be a 2-person house. We are currently a 4-person house. We are most likely have staff members teach literacy and social studies or math and science. This is going to set the conditions for interdisciplinary work. When we know both sets of standards, we're able to truly make connections and build interdisciplinary work at a higher level and more frequently. The 2-person house is important in order to decrease the number of relationships and transitions that students have in their day, but maintain that house system. It is also very difficult to decrease class sizes when we have a 4-person house, because your numbers have to get so large in order to have another 4-person house. In the high school, you can add 1 staff member here or there. Looking at the house system differently with 2 or 3-person houses will allow us to look at our class sizes and make sure that we aren't just keep fitting students into our system, that we truly build the system for our students. Our core classes will be 60 minutes of math, 60 minutes of science, 60 minutes of reading, and 60 minutes of writing. So a teacher will be teaching both math and science, and both reading and writing. As we continue to move forward, we continue to engage and understand that reading and writing are truly 2 separate subjects, and right now we're asking our literacy teachers to teach reading and writing in 1 60-minute period. What this means is that we will still have 3 45-minute classes per day. So right now, students have 4 60-minute classes and 3 45-minute classes, and that will maintain the same. The way Power School will set a schedule is that students would have 45 minutes of social studies every other day, which would be required and taught by those reading and writing teachers, setting the conditions for interdisciplinary work. And 45 minutes of a STEM course every other day, which would be an elective and would replace students who have a second core plus right now. We heard loud and clear through the research and from our staff around having meaningful courses that align with student interests in those STEM and science fields that continue to evolve. And we also heard that we need to try to do it all and make sure that we don't discard a set of standards or an important aspect of a student's life. And by engaging and setting the conditions for our teachers to teach math and science or reading, writing, and social studies, we're going to be able to build that interdisciplinary work with flexible scheduling, where it might say something on a student's schedule, but knowing that we're utilizing our instructional minutes to the best capacity that we have and working interdisciplinary is the ideal state. It is a lot of work in a year and a half, but we will start this work and be able to build towards that ideal state at our new middle school. So what's next for us? We're going to continue to seek input from staff. We told them we were going to be transparent and honest with them as we went through this process, and that is what we're doing. Right now, we shared this information with them, and as we said we would, in order to be transparent, as we know this to be true today. As we know, we could have an increase in enrollment, and we would need a 3-person house, or another house of this, or different teachers might need to teach different things to respond to our students. But our decisions have really kept the student at the forefront of this conversation and moving towards that building to set the conditions for our students to be successful. Something that we're really cognizant about and keep at the forefront of our decisions is our current 6th grade students will be in 4 buildings in 4 years. They're in elementary school right now. They'll be in the current middle school in 7th grade, the new middle school in 8th grade, and high school in 9th grade. And we are keeping them at the forefront of our decisions around how can we respond to them, shrink their world, decrease any sort of stress or anxieties that we can in their day. And we do believe that is through relationships, our house system, and interdisciplinary work. So from our staff, we are seeking a staff interest survey, which says March 15th. Oh, this was my only error, maybe. It's going to go out March 16th on Friday. And we are going to be seeking feedback from them. As this is different, and we know we have 5, 6 teachers, we want to hear from them where do your skills, your interests, your strengths, where do you fit? We want to honor as much of that voice as we can from our staff. Preliminary assignment notices, so we want to let people know as early as possible what their future looks like for the 2019-2020 school year. Because we will be welcoming an entire another grade level and staff, and we want to be, Ms. Ellihausen has been wonderful with acknowledging that, and we want to make sure that people know, and we are going to do our best to work through that. And we're going to conduct building listening sessions with HR, teaching and learning, with Mr. Miziak and myself to really hear, because we know that change is hard. No matter how much we say that we are great at change, we continue to change. We have evolved so much since the day we were born that we adapt, and we're really good at it. And it might have some bumps, but we want to hear from them of how we can make that better for our staff and our students as we progress to the new middle school. Any questions for us? This is Jake's time to shine.
Okay, I have a question. So where does personalized learning fit in here?
Everywhere.
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 Well, it's not a value, it didn't rise as a value or
That's a good question, because there's a lot of things that aren't on our 3 values: integrity, respect, a lot of great attributes that we want for our students. When we looked at the process that we were going for right now, is how do we build a structure, a schedule, programming for students in that new building? And the 3 that rose to the top truly allowed us an avenue to have conversations about that new building. This work is not done. It will continue, and when we welcome a 3rd new staff and a 3rd new students, we will engage in this process again. as we need to have a collective voice, a culture within our building, and personalized learning, as Mr. Cohen or Mr. Reuter, I'm sure would talk all day about, is infused in everything we do. It's a mindset. It is level 4 in our Danielson framework with how we evaluate teachers by looking at students are at the center of their learning. So whether you're in tech ed, you're in music, you're in math, we strive to personalize that learning experience for students. And I would argue that's really difficult to do if you don't know your students. So with our upcoming house structure, teachers will now have 60 students in a day versus 120. And this will allow them to be able to understand their students more personally.
And then there's also the career and college ready. There's been such a focus on that. I know this is still middle school, but it starts there, right? It's got to feed into high school. How does that, how do you take, you're designing this building, and then we're going to have to be choosing pathways and all of these other things coming at them at the high school. How are they connected? I'm not seeing a strong connection, but you're still getting started.
We're still getting started, but I have an answer for you anyway.
Okay.
So when we look at college career readiness and habits, skills, and knowledge, that's a big one. We're always shooting for that within, that's our goal, that students continue to know who they are. And in middle school, it's about exploration and that side of, you're gonna rule a lot of things out before you rule in who you are and what you are interested in. So college career readiness, we hope that we continue to build within our structures, that when students get to high school, they continue to refine who they are, what they know, what they're interested in, to make those choices as they go post-high school. But we're still gonna explore. We're just because we get a new building and a new grade level, our kids aren't gonna leave knowing exactly who they are as an 8th grade student and what they stand for and what they're gonna do when they're older. That would be great, but they're still kids and they're gonna keep exploring.
What social difficulties do you have now when the 7th graders come in, that you foresee with the 6th graders coming in, that you think you'll have to deal with, that you're anticipating right now? I mean, my daughter went to 6th grade in middle school, and I didn't have any problems, and things have changed, and I think students are more mature right now. So I'm just wondering what you're anticipating and how you plan to deal with it.
I anticipate it'll be really similar to our 7th grade experience. It's the big transition from one building to another, that they've been in a building for 6 or 7 years and they're gonna come to our building. Those same social emotional needs that we have in 7th grade will become in 6th grade. But I worked in a middle school that was 6, 7, 8, and they transition in and students are up to the task. They're really ready for middle school. But we will meet their needs and build those relationships with students. We are looking towards the first year where we will have all of 6th grade and all of 7th grade will be new to middle school. That will be a big year. And we will be ready for it. But the kids are up to the task, and so are the staff of coming to middle school in 6th grade.
And the building does allow separation, right? There's a wing for each grade level.
So currently, we have 2 different bell schedules, 7th and 8th grade. So our 7th and 8th graders rarely see one another, as is. We have not gotten to the minute details of what our schedule would be, but with 60-minute classes for core, 45 for elective, I would anticipate that we will have 3 different schedules where students won't be interacting with one another. At this time is how I would see that.
Just one final question, because it's budget time, and so when you do that different math of 2 versus 4, are we anticipating more staff when we make this move, or just chug along?
Right now, we'll have the same number of students and the same number of teachers within the district, because we're moving.
Okay, that's all I need to hear. Thank you.
That was easy.
Wasn't sounding like that, but glad to hear it.
I like the values.
Thank you.
I really do.
Nice job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Okay, then we'll move on.
Yeah.
We'll move on to 7C, the 2018-19 preliminary budget assumptions. Mr. Moser.
Well, we're starting the budget for 18-19. Always an exciting time, but of course, right at the beginning, we have to estimate a lot of things. We know very little for sure. So there's a number of assumptions we have to make. Enrollment is one of them. It figures into the revenue limit calculation. And so for next year, we're looking at having 20 additional resident students that we're planning on budget-wise. And the board did approve 67 open enrollment seats, but that we anticipate to remain pretty level by doing that. The Consumer Price Index, which, as you know, measures inflation, the state has tied that to the amount that the district can bargain with represented groups, and that number is the 2.13% for next year. State aid and the revenue limit. Our increase in equalized value was greater than the general state increase. So that in the formula for the state makes Franklin look richer, and so we'll probably receive less equalization aid than we would have otherwise received. We can receive more than we received this year, but if that hadn't been the case, we probably would have gotten more equalization aid. So that's one of the things we're looking at for next year. The 2017-19 state budget made no increase in the revenue limit for school districts for next year, but did add $204 a student under the per pupil categorical aid for an $850,000 increase, about 1.5% of the general fund revenue. For transportation, we still have our consortium, and although we did have a 0% increase for 4 years, we got beyond that, and it's a 2.5% increase for next year. As far as retirees, right now we have 5 teachers retiring, which is less than normal, but nothing wrong with that. Benefits, we kind of covered that earlier with the 0% increase in health and dental. And then as we go through the budget process, we'll be back in May with staffing projections, and then a first draft of the budget in June for the board to adopt in July, and then we have a second version in August at the annual meeting, and then finally in October is our final draft of the budget for the year after the state lets us know what our aid will actually be, and we know how many students we'll have. So that's the timeline and the process that we're on and the assumptions that we're making.
The 20 students under enrollment, it's usually 10 that we have for years. Is that because of planned subdivisions that you've heard about, or?
We've been getting more resident students from different things. We've been having open enrollment students move in so that they can be definitely part of the district and not be shifted between schools. So we've seen over 80 students increases the last 2 years. I still like to be conservative, but I did increase that 100% for this year.
On the transportation, the 2.5%, that doesn't really include fuel, right? Because that operates outside of that?
It does include fuel because it's the total route cost, but if fuel went up significantly, we would have to pay for that.
And if it's down, you would
We get a
benefit.
credit. Mhm.
So that kind of is what it is. This is really more labor costs that you're
Right.
talking about.
Yes.
Okay, and on the health insurance, have we ever had a 0 increase into your vast recollection?
Yeah, nothing jumps out at me
so
that we've had a
it's
0.
pretty rare,
Pretty amazing.
pretty special.
Very.
Right.
We're excited.
I'm excited, thank you.
Any other questions?
One more, on the transportation, you know how we've always had that consortium. Have we ever had a consortium with a school purchasing for food? Well, not for the food, but for office items, just like transportation.
No, we're part of a larger group a nationwide group for some purchasing. For office supplies, we're not, but we have contracts on that where we're watching the pricing and we're getting great pricing on it. But we do have the ability to buy off of the state contracts that exist, as well as the National Joint Powers Alliance for municipalities across the country.
Okay.
So we use different sectors and groups depending on what they cover.
Thank you.
And what are you seeing for utilities? Are we making utility budgets, or are we, do you see them growing? Or we've been underspending that year, I'm guessing, based on weather, right?
Right, we've been doing very well on that. We do purchase some in the market, and then we buy futures so that we're hedging our bets. And of course, gas
Stabilizing.
prices are lower than, I mean, even 5 or 10 years ago, no one would have ever thought they could be this low. So it works out well.
Okay, thank you. Item 8, school board liaison reports. We have A, personnel and policy, policy 4130, driver, alcohol, and drug testing. Mr. Lewis?
Sure. Well, I would suggest that we work on this policy first. If you can remember discussions 2 years ago and last year regarding a walk between WASB's policies and our book of policies, this new policy 4130 was a result of that direct comparison. We previously had a gap in our policy book regarding any driver operating district vehicles, whether or not they had used or under the influence of an illegal substance. This policy directly affects in those 3 points included in the policy and the policy reference of Wisconsin Statute 11135 directly solves the issue of having that gap.
I have one question on it.
Yep.
The board might recall, you might, Mr. Nielsen, be able to correct me on it, when we have like a band trip and that might go out of the country, like you have shuttles, parent shuttle to O'Hare. Sometimes, is that banned? Or am I thinking other trips that go to O'Hare?
I think they flew out, maybe they flew out of O'Hare, I don't know if
Okay.
it was O'Hare in Milwaukee.
So I'm wondering, does this cover, does a parent who shuttles students on a trip to an airport, and they might
In
have
their vehicle.
in their vehicle, does this, are they included in this? Because a parent who, because this does mention prescribed drugs too, which might say you're not supposed to take them while you're driving.
So I have an answer to that, actually, and it's those drivers that are approved from the district. So if it's a parent-organized carpooling, it may not be covered under the policy. If it's a school-organized carpooling with drivers that are selected and/or approved by the school, they would be covered under the policy,
Well, because
or be subject to the requirements of the policy.
when we approve this trip, aren't we, and it says in their
Students
presentation.
responsible for your own travel, I think is a phrase that's used very frequently in those discussions.
Okay, I was just curious when I read that.
We have a number of personnel who, our principals will get approved to drive students, because if a student needs a ride home and they need to get there quickly, those are approved employees. We have people who drive our smaller vans with small groups. Those are approved employees, and this policy does pertain to them. But if a parent drives students somewhere because they have to get somewhere and their transportation's their responsibility, this would not apply.
So then, we're not liable.
I would say no, but we're almost always liable for everything, so that would be a matter of circumstance.
Yeah, and we've done that. We've carpooled to the airport and going on to Florida for trips or whatever. You know, we did that with their cheer program, but I think that makes sense, what you said about transportation. Their responsibility, so.
It's usually stated on most forms, if it's a field trip form or, an overseas trip documentation, it does include whether or not that carpooling to and from airports or for those sanctioned events, it's either students are responsible for their own transportation or district will provide that transportation.
Thanks.
Because that's usually where the supervision would start.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the title of this is Driver Alcohol and Drug Testing. Is this really about our ability to test them for use when they shouldn't be using it, or?
So, we have, of course, our own bus drivers, and they're required to have a CDL license, commercial driver's license, and they're subject to the law in terms of those testing procedures, so we do follow those procedures. This policy includes individuals who don't have a CDL, and that we have certain requirements for them as well. They're probably not as rigorous as it would be for someone with a CDL under the law, but our policy here explains what we are going to do in this district for those individuals.
It does say individuals holding commercial driver's license and those individuals.
We've included them.
So this covers our bus
Yeah.
drivers?
It does.
The sixth paragraph, Linda,
Oh,
includes
which-
drug testing requirements.
And so we're going to be doing random drug testing?
That's where it's all based.
We will, but it won't be exactly the same way we do it for CDL. CDL is very prescribed in terms of frequency.
Just to that point, Linda, where it says all employees are subject to pre-employment reasonable suspicion, random, post-accident, return to duty, and follow-up testing. And that's aligned with state statute. That's the sixth paragraph. So it encompasses those requirements placed on any driver, whether they're CDL district drivers or potentially parent-approved drivers, or any of those that would be district-approved, as well as the drug testing requirements of anyone transporting students.
And you said this was a required policy?
Correct.
Required, okay.
So with that, I'll make a motion to approve policy 4130.
Motion by Mr. Lewis, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gamble. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries.
Okay, so the second policy, 5120, is a current board policy that was last reviewed, excuse me, in 2004. So this was included as part of the 10-year review pool of policies. Policy was updated, I think per discussion with the council and experience within the district
Yeah.
regarding previous approval or denial of whether or not a student is within school boundaries or district boundaries. And I guess I'll stop there, Dr. Miller, if you have any other comments, but it's fairly straightforward with certificate of residencies versus an affidavit. And if we don't have any questions, I'll make a motion to approve Board Policy 5120.
Motion by Mr. Lewis, is there a second?
Second.
Was it Mr. Nielsen?
It was.
Okay. Second by Mr. Nielsen. Any discussion? I do have one question. It says, 1, 2, 3. Paragraph 4, where you added lives within the district, number 2. For the purposes other than attendance. What's an example of that? You have- You must have just had
Yeah,
one.
it's statutory, though. That wording is statutory.
Okay.
Lives within the district for the purpose other, that means you can't just live with a relative to go to school here.
I see.
You
Okay.
can't do that.
Okay,
So you have to think of it in the reverse.
okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of revised policy 5120, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks.
And next is item 8B, Board Liaison Reports. Do we have any reports? All right, hearing none. Item 8C, School Visits. Any school visits? I think, Mr. Gamble, did you have one or no?
Yes.
Okay.
I was at the high school today. Mr. Villo, Dr. Mueller, Ms. Ellihausen. Got to observe the student walkout, and part of it was to see what they were going to do as far as their program, what they were going to talk about. I was impressed with the way they conducted themselves, very orderly. Mr. Volo made an announcement right at 10 o'clock to remember Parkland and the victims and asked for a moment of silence. Students started filing out. They read the names, had a quick bio of the 17 students and coaches. They had actually a good message that we need a societal change. And to hear some media reports it was supposed to be this giant anti-gun rally, the message I came away from was more of, we need to change values that respect human life, respect each other. And so that was a very good message. After that, they ended quietly, filed back into the high school. It was a very somber and sobering event. There were several students, you could tell tears in their eyes, and one that was literally crying after it was all over. So it was a good event. They conducted themselves quite well for teenagers, which was impressive.
What percent of the students participated?
I estimated around 100, or 225, no more than 250.
225%?
I deal in numbers, not percentages, sorry.
Thank
And
you.
then the ones that remained in the classrooms, obviously you could be in two places.
No, but I did see a few looking out windows, watching the rally going on.
Okay.
And I have to say, it was well coordinated with the Franklin Police. So they had the parking area blocked off so there could be no traffic coming in front of the Sabre Center where the students were. So it was well put together.
Thank you for being able to attend and talk about it. Thank you. Any other reports? Thank you. Item 9, school board debriefing. Are there any comments?
I would just like to thank Ms. King and Mr. Miziak for all the work they've done on the middle school program plan. I think you're doing a fantastic job. And then I'd also like to thank Ms. Ellihausen for coming into our district and taking on our Go 365 program and everything that came with it and the great success that we're having. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I would like to thank Janet for responding to the parent emails and just kind of being on top of all the stuff coming at us and doing a great job of answering those.
Thank you. Okay. Item 10 is future agenda items. We have financial literacy report on March 28th. Is that regarding,
What is that?
The new
Standards.
standards? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Pupil services report, April 11th. The district administrator goals and performance standards update, April 11th. The board self-evaluation, April 11th. Anything else?
Then maybe we take our things before April 11th, or we just, we'll take our.
The board self-evaluation? Yeah, we'll do it. Megan, will that be, we'll have to talk about when that'll go out. The board wants that at least a week ahead of time, correct? Or do you want it sooner than a week ahead of time?
Sooner.
I'd say
Yeah,
2 weeks.
We need to look at the results.
2 weeks ahead? We have the new template for it.
There's an Easter break.
Send it out next week.
Well, we've used the template before, but we're using are we using new software? No, okay. Same softwares, so. Then I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Lewis. Is there a
Second.
Second by Mr. Nielsen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned at 7:24.